addition, we also put in a grant request for Vivitrol, which is part of our MAT program. And again, we are still waiting on an answer on whether we received that grant. One of the things I did want to focus on today are some of the recidivism numbers for our MAT program, specifically Subutex. I'm very pleased to say that in September, I believe it was September 18th, 2022, I'm not sure exactly of the date, but we've been at this for 2 years, and our recidivism rates are fairly impressive and beyond what I had expected. So I'm just going to go through them very briefly here. At 90 days, we're standing at 14.4%. At 180 days, it's 22.4%. And then at 1 year, it's 31.5%. A lot of this is based on the number of people in the sample. So as I was working this report, I noticed that a lot of our numbers are just creeping down. So it appears to be trending downward. And I will give a lot of credit to our partners that are working. Donegal Substance Abuse Alliance does a lot of our post-release work with these folks, as well as our staff on crime care do a lot of the pre-release work in getting them scheduled for appointments in the community to continue on with this medication. So good numbers thus far. We're very pleased, we're going to continue on. Again, 144 people on the line today, 145. So we're getting up there. That is trending up as we do more new folks coming in. Next on my list is I just want to talk about our Compass Mark contract. I thank the commissioners. I believe it was about 2 weeks ago we received approval to have Compass Mark continue to come in and provide services for children of incarcerated parents. Very pleased with what they do. We have a 3-year contract with them now. And some of the services they provide, they do child visits. So last year they did approximately 43 child visits. They also do parenting inside and out classes. The new contract will allow them to increase the number of parenting classes they do because it includes a part-time staff. Very pleased with that. And I think the number that's most important to me, and the reason I'm such a proponent of this program, is that they worked, last year alone, they worked with 184 children outside the walls of the institution to provide a variety of services that those children and their caretakers need to address the multiple issues they have. It could be anything from food to clothing to counseling, working with school districts to make sure they're getting into their classes and functioning appropriately in school. So again, just want to say I'm very pleased with Compass Mark, and we're very happy to have them as a partner. So thank them. I know that Carly is here, and she's representing us today here. So thank you. And lastly on my list, I'd like to do our service award, and I love doing it here. I'm going to mention a name that we have mentioned before. His name is Blake Morrison, is our quarterly service award recipient. He couldn't be here today because he's in training for MRT, moral recognition therapy. He's going to be one of our instructors. But what I want to say about Blake is that he has been a driving force behind our efforts to implement the ATIMS computer program that we've been talking so much about. He's been a key member not only for treatment but for the entire prison. He's provided training and support to all staff, and he continues to do his drug and alcohol counseling work, as well as the case management work that he does with our inmates on his assigned housing unit. So very pleased to have him as our service award recipient, and I'll just end by saying he always does things with a smile. He never complains, and if you ask him to do something, he'll just say, got it, I'm on top of it, let's get it done. So great representation of our department, and I thank him very much. And that's all I have.
Thank you. Deputy Warden, questions, comments for Deputy Warden?
Yes, just to follow up on Joe's comments with regard to MAT and the recidivism. This past Tuesday, we had a drug court graduation. We had our largest graduating class. We had 12 participants, graduates. We now have 277 graduates from our drug court program, and every single one of those 12 graduates were residents of this facility for quite some time, and most, if not all of them, were involved in some form of MAT program, so it works. Thank you.
Joe, can you, I was trying to remember and trying to pull it up, but I couldn't, because we just had the prison stat data. So can you compare recidivism, do you remember what that, for general population, compared to the folks that are on MAT?
That's something we're working on, but we talked a lot about that. We don't have specific numbers, but we're estimating that it's approximately 60 to 65% of the general population, recidivism rate. As we get deeper into ATIMs, that's a functionality that program will allow us to measure much more accurately.
Yeah, and I think, so the agent is going to be amazing in terms of data, and I know Eric's here from Compass Large and Scott's here from the SSA, so we can even think about how we link the outcomes of folks that are in both those programs, and then like we're doing with MAT. So we have MAT, and how does that impact? Is there some sort of relationship there between that and the outcomes, and then the same thing, Eric, with Compass Large and Scott with your program initiative to see, to just be able to call out the linkages and the difference that makes in terms of recidivism.
Absolutely.
And ATIM, we're hoping we'll be able to help us do that.
Absolutely. I know that's one of the things that we've been looking at. Marcos and I spent a good deal of time looking at our statistics and how we can improve different measures that we can look to start collecting. So it's definitely one of the top things on our list. So.
And I was thinking when I was coming here too, since the prison stats, I know there's some people that take part of that and some people don't, but that data and how that's presented could be good just to implement it, just to have that form in the regular prison meetings for some of the data is the same that you're reporting on.
Yeah.
And some of those slides that we use for prison stats have the comparison on there at all, so they can just be updated on a monthly basis.
Yeah.
Once perhaps when ATIMs is up and running.
And again, I think we want to start including, again, Ramos and I had a lot of conversations over the past couple of weeks, and that's something we're working towards, is to include some of the statistics that Compass Smart provides for DSA, Substance Abuse Alliance, in these, for this meeting every month, and we're going to be working towards this very shortly. Yeah.
Thank you. Other questions, comments? Deputy Worship.
What's the 12, you said the 12-month percentage in recidivism, can you somehow lost that?
It was 14.4
Oh,
at 90 days for subject.
He has 12 months.
Oh,
1 year.
oh, 1 year, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
There's 31.5.
Okay.
At the last meeting, Deputy Warden Schiffer, I asked you for some more information about some of the statistics in the crime care report related to MAT, and the minutes for the last meeting here at the jail are not posted, so I'm not able to check the minutes, but I did not get a follow-up from the jail with that information. I'd like to kind of narrow it down. The one question I have that I'd like a follow-up is, how do you define the data in the crime care report on number of patients that are restrained? Because you had reported previously that all of the MAT patients were being restrained every day. If you have 157 Subutex patients, that would be 157 Subutex patients plus the methadone patients. But that's not being shown in your restraint statistic, which only shows 8 people being restrained.
I thought I answered this last month, but I will say that those are two vastly different statistics. That measure is for another function that we do here. So it's different. It's not included in that report. It's not something that medical does. Medical is involved in that other number.
So you're saying that I would just understand you. You're saying that the restraint number in here has to do with medical restraining the patients, but when those patients are restrained in the MAT line, that is security restraining the patients?
We've discussed this before. That's a security function.
So you don't keep that statistic for the state or for your own statistics?
We're not going to get into that anymore, as I've discussed. And the reason is, although our default is to be transparent and open, is that you are actively seeking to litigate against the prison, and you've actively sought to recruit people to litigate against the prison. So we do have a responsibility to the taxpayers to ensure that we're being cautious in that respect.
I would argue
But-
that
but
I'm
you
not
know-
actively litigating because I don't have standing to litigate, and you're an
Well,
attorney, so you
you
would be aware
have,
of
you have
that.
sought out people to do so, so your goal is to bring a suit, and we do have we have.
My goal is for the county not to be sued as a taxpayer, because that would be expensive.
That's
So I
not-
would think that
that's
this
not- that's not
board
your goal when
would
you-
have concerns about
It's not your
that.
goal when you've been out actively searching for people to litigate, so. Your question has been answered to the extent that, other questions, comments for Deputy? Okay, thank you. Item D is the administrator report, Laura Brown.
Good morning. As always, my report is short and sweet. Save it as the last. I noted initially we had 2 vacancies and received a resignation this week, so now I have 3. But I am interviewing on Monday for one of the vacancies and hope to get on top of the other vacancies. So I continue to do more with less, and I'm very appreciative of my staff, and unfortunately they're unable to attend because they're working. As noted last month with the integration of ATIM, some of the data is not readily available, specifically referring to the sentenced and unsentenced. The records department yesterday was, last night, as a matter of fact, was doing an audit to update the system. So until that information is readily available and trustworthy, I did not report it for this month, so I wanted to make you aware of that. However, I did play around with a lot of reports, and once it is fully capable, I think you'll be happy and pleased with the information that I'm able to present on the statistics from the administrative side. And as always, I ask if there's anything that you would like me to report on, please feel free to let me know. And I have my first taker today, Neil asked for me to report the day of the month that had the highest population. So I will make sure that I include that next month. And again, as always, if there's anything that you would like me to try to capture, please feel free to reach out to me. That's all I have.
Questions, comments, for
Yes, ma'am.
Hi, Gail Grove Scott. Is there a statistic available on the number of strip searches that the jail does?
I don't think that's an item that's entered into ATIM's, that we have to, that doesn't ring a bell, or does it? No.
It's not a capability of the new software?
No, I don't know that that's something that's entered into the system
Okay.
to be able to retrieve and pull the numbers.
Other questions for Rob? Okay, thank you. Next report is the facility management report. Bob Devonshire.
Good morning, everyone. I just want to start off by welcoming the new class recruits in. Congratulations on finishing up your time and moving on to the next chapter starting next week. I think you're going to find a fantastic, I don't want to call it co-workers, but a fantastic family that you're going to be working with here at the prison. There's a good crew out there. You'll learn from them, and there's a ton of opportunities for you as you move forward. So congratulations and welcome aboard. August, or let me start back over. Working on the new correctional facility as that project continues to move along. Deputy Warden will be giving an update on that here in a few minutes. Work orders for the month of August 2024, we had 80 work orders, 822 for the year so far, 103 work order average per month for 24, and we're the last 5 years 133. So again, those work orders are coming down as staff are doing more preventative maintenance, catching things before they happen. Again, you can see the trends over the last 5 years where our work orders are. So I would say at this point we're probably on par for about 1,200 or so work order a year.
Thank you, Bob. Questions, comments for Bob? Okay.
Thank you very much.
All right, and item F on the monthly reports is the financial report with Controller Cologne.
Hi. So for the general revenue, we had an increase of $166,822.78. Total expenses increased approximately $3.1 million. 3.1 was for personnel services. Supplies was $53,240.89. Purchase services of $21,381.89, and capital expenditures of $2,824. Regarding prison maintenance, There was an increase in supplies of $2,179. Purchase services, $157,494. And capital expenditures of $463 for a grand total of $160,136.91 in increased expenses. I did an update for the inmate general welfare funds reporting. The total funds on hand were $1,354,879.51. The total expenses paid to date have been $1,078,965.30, leaving a current balance of $275,914.21.
Questions for Controller? Okay, thank you.
Read the balance one more time, a little louder, please.
$275,914.21. Yes.
Question, so I discovered this late, actually today. The state code requires for an audit by an independent agency to the prison board every year of the inmate general welfare fund. To my record, looking for it, I see none since maybe 2015. Is that received by this board every year?
Well, by county code, the controller's office is supposed to do a audit, and we did do an audit of prison finances, and that's, if it's not uploaded on the website, I'll make sure that it is, because we just finished one. And that
So-
includes the business office and inmate general
Okay.
welfare fund, the store account, et cetera.
The code says it is to be reported to the governing prison board agency of the county.
Yeah, all the members receive it.
So without the public seeing it until it,
No, it goes online. That's
yeah,
all.
but we're never notified. It doesn't come to a meeting of the board. Isn't that a fairly important thing?
Yeah, I don't have a problem with that. I mean,
Yeah, it just doesn't happen. Or even the announcement that it's been received and it's now online.
It's a fair point.
It was noted last month. I believe that the conclusion is availability.
It's on the agenda or?
It was noted last month that it was completed and then
You wanna
resolved.
do
The findings
it?
were available.
Okay.
Yes.
I mean, if your point is to make that more prominent or known, that's fair. I mean,
Well,
it's publicly available, so
Yeah, the
I
point is
don't
it's
have
a-
a problem doing that.
It's a big fund and it has some new stuff related to it with the phone contract issue. So it ought to be in the public eye. I just encourage you to
And we can
put it on your agenda.
be prominent about that.
Can we put on the agenda for next week, do a presentation?
Sure.
Detail?
I mean, I can do that. However, be aware, it's not just the inmate general welfare fund, so there's samples from different aspects of the prison financial world. So it won't just be the inmate general welfare fund.
Okay.
You could highlight it as part of the report.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, there's no old business under item 6. We want to new business under item 7. Item 7A is the new prison project update, as we frequently do, and Lancaster will provide an update on where they are.
This is the schematic design update. Members of the community had 2 recent opportunities to review and provide comments on the recently submitted schematic design package. At the Commissioner's work session, which was held on August 13th, and at a community listening session that was held on August 21st. At the listening session, participating community members provided feedback on topics related to the site, wellness, and housing. Notes and community feedback from the meeting have been posted on the project website. And as a reminder, the schematic design is still in draft form, and community members may provide comments and questions through the project website or the project email address, which is lccf@lancastercountypa.gov.
Thank you. And this will kind of cross over into item B2, which is feedback, and it says feedback from the prison board, but certainly,
I just have a quick question.
Yes, ma'am.
You said questions and feedback, but then it also states no one will reply to your question, so how is the question?
See, all the questions will be reviewed, so everything's posted online, so everyone knows what was asked. And then there's a review process where we start looking at each question, each suggestion, both that were made in person at the listening station and at the listening session, and the stuff that's posted on the website. So all that stuff goes through the advisory committee, and we have discussions on everything.
Do you have a question now you want to answer, ma'am?
Not particularly, I did send in a question, it says that they're not gonna respond to you, I'm just wondering how do we get our answer?
Sure. We'll gather all those and try to provide general responses as we continue to go through, but you're always welcome to ask it here or at any of our commissioners meetings if you have specific questions. But as those come in, we'll try to gather them, and if there's general themes, we'll try to address those.
I mean, just generically, I'm concerned about there not really being any open space for prisoners to actually look at.
Right, that was noted by a couple people at the listening session. So it's definitely a topic that has been discussed and probably will continue to be discussed as we move through the schematic design.
Thank you.
And I think, one of the things that I've had asked in kind of discussions with those that are overseeing the operations of this is at a prison board meeting to sort of segment the questions, like put them in categories of questions and feedback that we got from the community, and then responses to, are these things that we can address in this phase? Is it something that we need to put in a, column that when we move into the next phase, we can take it into consideration? And so, my preference would be to bring it to this meeting in an organized fashion in terms of online requests as well as the listening sessions that we had over the past, we just had and a few others, and then how will we respond to them in a formal way. They do sit in buckets in terms of how they relate to a particular phase we're in with evaluating the project, and that this would be a good meeting to be able to do that in terms of, similar to what Mr. Parson said, whether you would receive a direct email about your question, or whether your question would come to a group like this among the other questions, and then there'll be a response, and if you're able to make this meeting or not, it will be documented in the minutes of the meeting. So
That would be great.
I think that was, my recommendation in terms of hope that as we move forward to be able to do it in an organized fashion.
Item D is feedback from the prison board, and we'll take public feedback too, of course. Just now that we've had a chance to digest the first draft of the design, I wanted to make some time, if there's any specific questions or comments from the prison board right now on that first draft, or anything else that they want to see right now. I can start off. I think we're going to continue to digest this, continue to take the public comments like her comment, and address those. For me, it's a first draft. It's essentially, I think, kind of a wish list of a lot of things. And for me, the question is, the size and cost. Still, we've got a lot of public comments about the size, the number of beds. Is that appropriate? I think the number of beds we have is probably about right, but I think it's important to really drill down on that and sort of test that, stress test that, if you will. And I think it's important to have a couple of different sort of options. So if you were to say, okay, this design is option A, what's B and what's C? And for me, they would be maybe less square feet, because I am worried about the price tag, given what we know now about the square foot cost, and then the total square foot of this schematic design as it is. This may be something close to what we end up going with. I don't know. I don't know what ultimately the Board of Commissioners and the prison board will agree to or want, but I think it's important to have different options, including options that show a smaller square foot size, whether that's some less beds or whether that's shrinking other areas. I think it's important to have those so that then when there is a decision, it can be, okay, we like this from option A, but maybe we like this from B and this from C, or maybe we like more open space, and then those things can be put together into a final draft. So I think that's my feedback to the staff, the team that's been working on this, because I don't want to get in a position where we're sort of just working down one channel. I want to see different options before we make any kind of decisions for the next stage, and continue to have public feedback like that today. So that's my thoughts right now. I don't know if anybody else has some thoughts.
I was pleased to see the focus on the facilities for programming to address recidivism and to address programming that can occur while the people are here, because we all know that oftentimes if people get out and they're not integrated into some type of recovery program or some type of program that prevents recidivism, they're not going to do it on the outside necessarily. It has to be a collaboration between what's available on the outside, but I think prison with facilities that allow people to really get started and get it ingrained in their process, there's value to it. So I was pleased to see that there's proper planning for programming within the facility.
Anything else, Aaron?
Yeah, so I would say, I'm really pleased with the design. I feel that, way before I became commissioner and started in January, there was a lot of discussions about what it could look like. I think we did a pretty good, job on getting public opinion and experts' opinion on what it could look like. There was the discussion about starting out, was it 1,200 beds or 1,300 beds? So even in terms of getting it just slightly under 1,000 right now was sort of the, kind of playing around with the bed idea. What I'm most concerned about is the amount of time, extra time it's gonna take us to think about, do we vote, do we approve what we have before us? It's just even sitting here today, it's just the staff, the inmates, the visitors, the community. It's, in my opinion, it's time for a new prison. And if we think about if we would have done this 3 years ago, what the price tag might have been, it seems like almost every month or every 6 months as we move forward, it's gonna get more expensive. And at some point, we're gonna have to say, this is what we need. It's been, it's been 173 years ago we built this prison. A long time ago, and we want to do it right. And I know my people on the board before I've been here have been saying that we want to take it slow and make sure we do the right thing. I don't know how slow is slow and how much longer we have to take to do it. I'm really pleased with the design. We took a long time to actually have a written plan with a schematic design off of that. Similar to Judge Ashworth, I'm really excited about the space that's there to allow the folks such as, we talked about Scott being here for the SSA and Eric Kennel being here for Compass Mark and others, to be able to provide those rehabilitative services and have that available for one-on-ones and also for classes. I get concerned, I've been in large projects before in my previous job. When you get to this point where you're looking at a design and you have space and you have a dollar figure put to it, people get nervous and you start thinking about cutting. So this is the time. I don't feel like there's a lot of waste or fat into it. In terms of what I hear particularly from the staff, the employees, in terms of efficiencies. In this building, efficiencies are not here. From a safety standpoint, there's opportunities to do things safer, which I believe is built into the schematic plan. I believe that it is, what I have here written down, safe, supportive environment for the inmates, for the staff, the visitors. I think that the schematic design really represents that in terms of what we have now. It's a lot of money, and I don't know what we would think it was going to be. I don't know if any of you built a new house or anything. New houses are a lot of money these days. So again, 173 years ago we built it, and here we are now in this facility. It seems to me that every month that goes by and we don't have a plan to get started on something new is difficult. So I don't know what the magic number is, but keep kicking the can down the road to make the decision.
Well, let me address that. It's not kicking the can down the road. Like, I've been a proponent of this project since I came into office, but doing it right, which is the reason that we have public support for this project is because we've been careful. One, put the county in a financial position to do it, paying down debt, raising our bond rating. Two, getting the perfect piece of land and doing it in a way, normally you'd have 100 people in your meetings objecting to having a prison, but because it's the perfect piece of land, we've had support from the community on that. And now it's time to design, and I don't want to rush through the design phase and end up with something, one, that costs the community more than is necessary, or two, isn't perfect. So my only comment is, I don't want to rush that. We ought to be careful. We ought to stress test the design, make sure that we're not missing anything. And I think that means looking at more than just, okay, one option and we're going to go with it. I think it means really thinking it through, taking that feedback that we've gotten from the community and making sure that we're being careful. Everybody on here is committed to the project. It's just a question of, okay, let's really think through every possible piece and then make our decisions accordingly.
Yeah, and I'm not saying that you're not, so know that, I know you have been about this, so I'm not saying, I'm just saying, like, to have terms that are not, sort of vague, to have sort of a clear plan, when we're thinking about, we want more community input, we want to look at aspects of it and see what's gonna work and what's not gonna work. What's the specific behind that? So, an example might be with the listening session and the point of, I had hoped that we would have the listening session comments and how we're gonna be thinking that through, and what's that next step of how we do that. So if we're thinking about getting additional comments, what is that? Do we wanna do that in a week, have it done by another week? And then how do we think through decisions as opposed to just sort of saying sometime in the near future, we're gonna do this? That's the piece that I'm just worried about now, because it seems like, you know, there's.
Well, we have a
not
team, we have a
specific.
team CGL who's continuing to move the project forward, as is, Linda and the purchasing department. But there does need to be points where we're continuing to take public feedback and continuing as a board, prison board and commissioners to provide feedback. So,
Yeah, so what I'm saying is like, let's say in a week or two, we're gonna have some way for all of us, if we're not getting feedback right now, we can all get
But
feedback.
that is the purpose of public meetings, is
Yeah.
for us to discuss them. So we have public meetings every week. At any meeting, we can put it on the agenda for the commissioners to discuss, but it's to be appropriate at prison board meetings for the prison board to provide feedback.
So I will say, from my perspective, there's a lot of agreement among us about the project. And I think that's a good thing, because not only is the public, I think, supportive of a new facility, but I think generally we hear support for the new facility. And generally, what we're looking at, the question now becomes, and I've been involved in public works projects, and building projects, and we're at the stage now that we do need to make sure, before we head into the next level of design, that we are comfortable with the schematic to the point where it is, it's ready for the next step, which is you have a design firm that is taking one step short of designing, providing design documents that will be ready for bid. They'll be all but ready for that. That takes time and it takes money. And it's very important that, in my view and experience, that before you take that next step, that everyone's in a consensus of agreement, the community, this board, the Board of Commissioners, and that's where we're at right now. This is the first public airing, if you will, of the schematic design. Surely we're not in a position to vote today. We haven't even finished with looking at the public comment and then having that come to us from the consultants that we've hired in our staff to say, and Commissioner Miller, you mentioned this, and you even mentioned I'm bringing it back to the next prison board meeting. That is important. We should not move forward until we have that comment and that feedback from the public, and then that feedback and comment from our consultants. So as far as I'm concerned, we are exactly where we should be in taking the steps that we should. From my perspective, I first want to thank the consultants and the staff as a team, and the community, quite frankly. I was at the listening session. I have, had some dialogue with the consultants at that meeting and our staff in between. And I just want to say, job well done. From my perspective, the schematic design is well done. The document is well done. The information is contained is well done. I don't have any specific issues with what's in the facility. In fact, I want to compliment those folks for really taking the time, not just putting squares and rectangles and circles and triangles on a piece of paper and saying, hey, this is about what it could look like and how it could function, but really taking the time to think about the adjacencies, thinking about how it sits on the land, thinking about how it all works in terms of not just cost, but operation. There's a lot of that work going on behind the scenes, as it should, and I think that's a job well done. It is now incumbent upon us as a community, and also, as I mentioned, the board, the prison board, and also the board of commissioners, to, at this meeting and future meetings, as Commissioner Parsons said, to say, okay, what are our thoughts on that? And similar to Commissioner Parsons, I believe that we should now ask, and we are asking, quite frankly, at this meeting, that take what you've done and test it even further. I'm not sure the size is the size that we should end up with. And I'm not just talking about the number of beds, I'm talking about other aspects of the facility. Rather than name them all, we know what they are. My question is that really the appropriate size? What is driving that size from a standpoint of that's what we're going to go with in all but a final design? I'm not sure I see that. I think we need to have that. I think alternatives, what led ultimately to what we have? What were the other options that were considered that are not in there, so that we have that and we can make a final determination prior to going to the all but final design. Because once you get there, like I said, you're going to take time and money. And the last thing you want to do is get to that end of that point, which is several months from now, 5, 6 months from now, and spend that money, and then you come back and say, well, I'm not quite there. Let's go back to the drawing board. That would be the wrong time to do that, quite frankly. Will there be adjustments after that? Absolutely. We've said that all along. But the time to sort of vet all of that is now, and we're not quite there yet. I think over the next month, from my perspective, we should be able to get there. So to summarize, let's get all the public feedback that we have, get the answers to those. We need to see those as well. And any specifics that we have, let's make sure we get that to the team. I don't really have any specifics necessarily. I've already said what I said about I like the concept. I think it takes into consideration everything that we have said. I just want to see kick the tires on that a little bit more in terms of each of the areas and the spaces. And quite frankly, we're all going to have a say on that. Courts are going to have a say from the perspective of, for instance, the juvenile area. Some other, you already mentioned about the program area. I like that. There's other aspects we should be looking at before we get to that next step. So that's my feedback. Anything else from the board?
So I'm just trying to just quantify this, and Ray, thanks. I think you quantified it to some extent. You kind of put a month, perhaps. You said that. I don't know if you meant to say that or not.
No, I did. I think I like this. I'm taking from what I understand where we are now and the feedback we've gotten, listening, and I would tend to agree that if we take another month between the commissioner meetings and the next prison board meeting, I don't know if we'll be there. I'm saying I'd like to be there. I don't know because I don't have a crystal ball as to what we're going to see and hear. If the team comes back and says, hey, we've gotten all this feedback, and yeah, we can provide the information that it seems like we're saying to all of us, great. But if the team come back and says, no, hey, we're gonna need some more time, then we need to look at that. So I don't wanna put a deadline on it.
Yeah, I think it's difficult today because I think the operational team, which is Bob, Linda, and the warden, you know, Bob, you're the only one here, Linda's not here, I don't think, and neither is the warden. But to basically say, are we giving them enough guidance to say, you know what to do in the next week, you know what to do tomorrow, to be able to get information to us that's gonna satisfy the questions of the, or the questions or the, whatever it is we're looking at next. And say, Bob, do you have an opinion on that, since you're the only one representing that group of three?
Hey, we're looking at everything that has come in from the listening sessions as well as the things that we're walking into, to make sure that we've gone through if there's reasons, like you had mentioned open space, you know, we've been down that road with some open space, we had some challenges. And there's processes that we've gone through to make sure that, you know, we're providing as much as we can, but also looking at the project as a whole, to make sure we're meeting the bed count, the ability to do, programs that are there. So, yeah, I mean, definitely, feedback is great. I've been writing down here as you all have been talking, this is very helpful.
Yeah, I guess I'm thinking about how do you organize it for the next step, not to get too much detail. So if we use the listening session as an example, here's all the feedback that we got. This is what we can think about doing now. This is what we looked at already, and we're not at the next meeting. And this is why we can't do it, or something along those lines. That takes a deep dive. If we're looking at square footage or the physical piece to it, I'm not sure if we are saying that we need to revisit that. You know, in your mind, are you thinking, here are the pros and cons of if we do this, and this is what our recommendations are? Are we talking about that level of detail for a relook?
I am. And I think cost is a concern, quite frankly. I mean, it's the largest project that we'll have in the county's history. And before we take that next step, I'm not going to repeat myself. I'm not going to repeat Commissioner Parsons. I think that's what we're looking at. And from my understanding, you have the information you need, Bob and the team. You're already starting to look at some things from the public's feedback and from the feedback that you're hearing today. So I think they're on that process, and I just want to see what that looks like. I want to get that at a meeting, whether it's at this board and or the commissioners meeting, before we take a vote.
Yeah. Now, to me, that sounds like a big deal, because if we're looking at square footage, we think about what are the services that we feel are adequate right now. What's room size, number of, if we're, you know, we're talking about from a classroom, do we get centralized booking? There's a spot scheduled for that. So, as I mentioned earlier, I've been part of programs like this, Women and Babies, the Health Campus, and then when it gets to the point, and then you cut out, and all of a sudden something that we are saying that we really want is gonna be gone. So is it like, and I don't know, I almost feel like we went through that. That's why I'm having a difficult time with this. I feel like we were really open. I don't think we were being robust in our asks. I think we dreamt, and when I read things from the past of what happened, it seems like there was an original sort of dreaming of how this could be and how big, but I really feel that people were, you know, looking at it from a financial perspective, but still wanting to create the outcomes and have a great space for what it is we need to create. So that's why I have a difficult time, because I don't feel like this is like the Taj Mahal or anything that's above and beyond. It's pretty conservative in my mind about what we're doing in each of the areas. And so that's why I get nervous and wanted to kind of get a sense of what is it that we're looking at as the next one, because that means something might be cut. And, you know, we're talking about, you know, the potential for more open spaces outside, that's adding. I had a request early on, I was gonna bring it up today too, related to, in the PowerPoint when we talked about sustainability and operational efficiencies and the list of options for design features to take into consideration from a sustainability standpoint, the green roofs, the geothermal systems. I know, Bob, particularly you, because that's what your bailiwick is, knowing, you know, how cost prohibitive they are, how much savings down the road. So it's gonna cost us some now, which, you know, to even think about that when we're thinking about how can we reduce cost, but that whole piece of, even with the sustainability piece, if we do those now, how much savings over the next 10 years, 20 years are we gonna have with the facility because we looked at some of these sustainability options that were listed in slide 21 of the slide deck, you know, but that takes time to think about, and you might have been doing some of that already, and that's what I don't know, and we're asking this question about the time it's gonna take to try to get this done. Can it be done somewhere around, within a month to have that detail?
I don't, well, from my perspective and from my background, that's the next phase. And I'm saying you nod because that's what you do. You need to have an agreed upon schematic design, you need to size before you can even get there. That would be the next phase. And talk about taking time. They'll be chasing their tail trying to figure that out while they're trying to figure out and finalize the schematic design. That's not how you do it. So we need to get through this process and we go from there. We need to, you know, it's been deliberate.
Well, I think with the, and I don't want to mix things up too much, I think with what I just mentioned about the potentials that were in slide 21 for sustainability, those are things that I think when we think that we didn't add that into the current, what we think the square footage pricing is, because it's sort of addition to that. Bob, you have to speak in your head, isn't that correct?
I would say that's to come yet.
Yeah, so that's,
There's- The number we've looked at for square footage, I would call it more of a broader, bigger number. The next step will help, they'll start to fine tune that number down to what it ultimately should be.
The next,
As we go through the finer development of, you know, where the receptacles, the switches.
so that's the next phase.
That would fall in the next phase, and that will actually allow us to start to fine tune that number per square foot, much better than where we are right now.
So if we think about in a month that we would vote on this, we would be voting on a price, potential price or a range too. Or for what you said, it sounds like, well, the next phase would actually maybe change that price, which then we're not voting on a price.
Yeah.
For this.
Right, you're not really voting on a price until we have bids received. That's when that will, you know, take place. But right now, you're kind of getting us in the ballpark, not maybe the infield of the ballpark, we're just in the ballpark of what that number is. As we go through that next phase of design, we'll be able to start to fine tune that number better, you know, through our engineers and our architects.